All right, it's that time of week. Catch up with Mike LaTulip as Illinois bounces back with a 95-85 win over Iowa. Much needed after that Penn State collapse. And Mike, we'll dive into some of these big moments. We'll talk about the bench mob, should we call him that, after one game. But Niccolò Moretti, we'll talk about him, Ammani Hansbury. I thought Justin Harmon was fantastic. Big game from Coleman Hawkins. And if we found any defensive strides in an 85 point, despite giving up 85 points, but you said this was one of your favorite wins of the season. Yeah. Why?
Well, coming off of a massive collapse, like you mentioned, I just think that, there were a lot of questions about this defense. There was a lot of questions about how certain guys would respond, how the staff would respond. And you have to turn the page and deal with a team that since January 1st is the number 7 offense in the country, while you're having all these defensive questions, while you're having some, even broader questions. But I thought that the necessary changes were made defensively heading into the game. And then the right strings were pulled during the game. And I thought Brad Underwood and the staff played a massive part in that win. And there was I just thought the contributions you got when they made those changes, guys stepped in and were fearless. That's why I was there live, and you could feel it, right? There was this kind of unifying aspect to it by the end of that game. And I go to games alone most times, and I sit there and I watch it because I have to talk about it afterwards. And I'm usually not very demonstrative in the stands, but I was really fired up after that game, just for a myriad of reasons. But I'm walking on the court and I lock eyes with Dion, and he's doing radio, and I just go, man, let's go. Just the way it all went down. We talk about the line change, obviously, all that, but to bounce back like that in that spot, I thought was really awesome.
Yeah, Coleman was the story of the game, but let's be honest, that line change, that felt like I don't know if I want to go seminal moment of the season, but it felt big because it felt like Brad was enough of this. I have to show this not only to the rest of my team, but everybody that this is not good enough. We're not doing this again. So what did you think of the move and sitting there watching this, Mike? Because you see Brad just everybody out. What did you think of that? What did it say, and what did it do to this team?
Well, you first gotta ask yourself why, right? Why did it happen? And to be honest, and we'll go through the film and everything, I thought the effort was really good in the first half. I thought the intent was there. The change they made defensively to stop switching and keep matchups, I thought gave them a little more bite. So it's not like this was this 22-minute buildup to where it was almost enough is enough, get these guys out. I looked at it where you go, okay, your first 4 shots of the second half are threes. You're not attacking the paint. You've lost a little bit of that bite defensively to start this half, and you've gotten beasted twice by a freshman on the glass. Okay, so what I saw was actually less of a reaction. We just got to get these guys out of here. And I thought it was more preventative because I think Underwood saw where it was going. And it wasn't we've come to our wits' end, get these guys out of the game. It was get these guys out of the game because we still have enough time to send a message and get them back in at some point. But it felt very preventative. It's starting to slip, and I will not let it slip. This is not slipping. Get them out. And yeah, I thought that takes a lot of guts, man. It does, because think about the situation, right? You're sending in a second unit comprised of some guys that play, one guy that really had not at all, against, like I said, a top 10 offense in the country, who at that point, because it was so early in the second half, all their starters were in. Mm-hmm. It's not like you're working them in where you have some bench guys that you can also match up some of these other guys on. All their starters were in, and they kept their starters in after the media when Illinois kept those guys in as well. So there just aren't a lot of second units in the Big Ten that could do that and hold down the fort enough. So I thought it was an awesome move. I thought it made all the difference in the game.
So let's talk about that. I mean, Niccolò Moretti checks in, has a huge performance, and stays in the game. 17 minutes he played in that second half when he didn't play a minute in the first half, and he's barely played, 29 minutes in the Big Ten so far this season. Ammani Hansbury brings some energy. And I thought Justin Harmon, I mean, we talk about a Coleman Hawkins bounce back. Justin Harmon, I thought turned the game at some points, Mike. I mean, 12 points, made all 6 free throws, some tough finishes at the rim. But he had 4 rebounds in a minute that I thought turned the game in one of the most important moments. What did that bench bring, and what can that do for those guys moving forward?
Well, I talked about the fearlessness, right? And let's start with Justin Harmon, because I think it's important to talk about the line change and also mention Justin Harmon. Justin Harmon came in with 3.5 minutes left in the first half. So message sent there for sure. And I thought it was so important for him to come in with that line change, with the guys coming into the game. And the reason for that is the Penn State game, and I was critical of Justin Harmon, just like I'd be super critical of Coleman Hawkins. Like, Coleman Hawkins was horrible against Penn State. And I don't feel bad saying that, because both of those guys have set a standard of what they're capable of as players, right? Like, they set that standard. Justin's a really important part to this team. This team, I don't think, hits their ceiling without Justin Harmon being on top of what he's doing. Coleman Hawkins has set a standard as being one of the most impactful players in the Big Ten. And fortunately or unfortunately, when that's the bar that you set, you're held to that. And it's not like a make shots. Harmon missed shots, Hawkins missed shots, and, they're not any good. It's the approach, right? The mental approach and how dialed in are you? Like that has to be non-negotiable game to game. And so when you sub in Harmon with that during that line change, psychologically, I thought it was so good for him, because you're asking yourself as a player who's getting subbed in, okay, we're all going into the game because what? Okay, they're subbing out these guys because of maybe a little bit of a lack of effort, lack of bite, lack of focus, lack of toughness. So if I'm one of the 5 guys getting subbed in to take that group off the floor, I cannot be that. Yeah. So I thought that just really sparked Justin, where he's like, I'm looked at as one of those guys who's coming in to take those guys out. I have to deliver. And that's not like points. That's not, that is like, I'm dialed in defensively. I'm cutting off the ball. I'm a menace on the glass. Like, I think Justin Harmon can be an Andres Feliz like rebounder. And he has probably 2 or 3 inches on Andres. Mm-hmm. Like, he can be really high level in that area. And so, look, I think you're 8-0 when Harmon scores in double figures. And I think you could look at that as like a points thing, but that's an aggression thing for Justin, because he shot 6 free throws as well. He got to the line, he attacked, and a couple of those were in transition, where he's able to be a part of a unit that gets a stop and gets out and finishes. But I'll mention Nico as well, right? Huge spark. He orchestrated that second unit really well. I think it's part of the reason you opted for Moretti over Gibbs Lawhorn. But he orchestrated that unit well. I thought when he cycled back in with really some of the first unit, he took a little bit of heat off of Marcus. Yeah. And I think allowed him to be a little bit more, I guess, have his legs a little bit more, because I thought he was absolutely gassed at the end of Penn State. But we'll see where Nico fits in moving forward, because part of me feels like it's going to be very matchup dependent. One thing I want to look at for him is 17 second half minutes, 3 fouls. So, if he is going to play somewhat extended minutes, can he stay on the floor depending on who his matchup is? Because that's really tough. As a freshman, I think he's like a year away body wise with Fletch, to feel even more probably confident there defensively. But what I will say is he plays his butt off. Yeah. And I think that's why earlier in the season, if people want to, because this is what's going to happen. People are going to be like, you had him the whole season. Why didn't you play him? I
You're
think
feeding right into where I'm going, Mike, because this was a phenomenal performance. Hits 2 threes, really had some bite defensively, getting over screens, all of that, contested well. Like even some of the fouls, I didn't think he fouled. I thought he had great verticality. But like now I think people are like, oh, this guy's going to play 20 minutes. I don't think that's going to be the case. But the fact that he showed the mental toughness to come in, to play poised and to be ready for that moment, I thought was encouraging, that at least you can go back to that. That if you need that card, you can play that card again. I'm not personally expecting him to be 10 plus minutes the rest of the season, but I do think he's earned more opportunity, obviously.
No, I agree. I think you will see him mixed in along with probably another guy we're gonna talk about here shortly. So to be able to go, to your 10th, 11th guy and have it be, the caliber of a Nico Moretti that can go in there and not just be like a point A to point B guy. You can bring some guys in and they're just like, okay, my job is to just take care of the ball, hold on to it, don't make a mistake. If I hit the ball, get it to whoever it needs to be and get out of the way. Like he can go and initiate some things. And I thought that was really impressive.
And he just brings something you don't have otherwise, right? A guy offensively who can break things down, who can handle pressure easily. And as you said, I thought he just took pressure off Marcus. And I think that's needed just to give him a break. I mean, it felt like there was a difference with Marcus playing 29 minutes. Maybe some of these starters playing 29 to 34 minutes rather than 38 towards the end of this game. But defensively, I still have some concerns. I liked what he brought, but man, that was fun. And it gives you not only an option for the long term, but an option that you can play if you need to.
Yeah, I think people are going to look at this and be like, you have your point guard for the rest of the year. Marcus Damas has done a hell of a job as a point guard.
Yeah.
Some people I've talked to the past couple of weeks are like, well, does Ty Rodgers move back to more of a natural? Ty Rodgers hasn't been a point guard for 2-3 months.
That's right.
Right. He's played more 5 than he has point guard. And for Damas, like we can talk about Moretti, we can talk about, we'll talk about Ammani Hansbury, like we'll talk about all these guys, and that's great. And these guys are what they brought to that game. I thought made a major impact on the outcome. I really do believe that. But when it gets to March and it gets to like, if you're relying on a Nico Moretti, if you're relying on Ammani Hansbury and those guys, like one, those guys aren't ready for that. And 2, you need your guys to be the guys in March, right? You need Terrence Shannon to be Terrence Shannon. You need Marcus Damas to be Marcus Damas. You need Coleman Hawkins to be Coleman Hawkins. If those 3 guys aren't playing up to the level that they're capable of, that's the issue more than like, hey, who else can we kind of mix in here? Now, in certain moments like that, full line change, hey, foul trouble, hey, we need a spark. That is more of what I see for those 2 guys, and that isn't really important. Like that, I don't want to diminish that at all, because those guys can play just as big of a role, minute to minute as some of the other guys. But at a macro level, you need your guys to be the guys, and so that's on that older group, that more experienced group.
Before we turn the page to one of those guys being that guy the other day, Ammani Hansbury, I don't know if Brad was maybe a little hyperbole saying he would play 20 minutes a game if he were fully healthy, but I think he would have been in the rotation if he were fully healthy this year, because you just know what he's going to bring. He might be a little undersized, but there's a tenacity and effort. You've talked a lot about how vocal he is in drop coverage on defense, but there's energy off the bench that I feel like, of all those guys in the post, like Dane Danger made an impact, wasn't able to finish around the rim quite as well, but had 8 rebounds. I love that out of him. But Ammani, I know I'm getting that every time. So what did you think of his game, and what do you think of him moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think the comment that Brad Underwood made of like he'd be playing 20 plus minutes, I think that's just kind of the number to get your attention a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Because if he came in and was like, if he was healthy, he'd be playing 12 plus minutes. You'd be like, all right, that's
right.
All right, so you'd work him in here and there, but like that, I think he's trying to explain the importance that Ammani has to his team. But yeah, now that he seems healthy, he's got to play. That may not be 20 minutes, but he's the type of guy in spurts that can really make an impact in 8 to 10, 10 to 12. Maybe it's 15 in some games if he's got to spell some of these other guys. I love his disposition. There's like a certain and I'm not even saying this to be cliche. Like there's a certain look that guys have in their eyes. And I was sitting on, a couple rows up on the sideline kind of during the game. And you can see it even more when you're in person with Ammani. It's like he has this look in his eyes where he plays like his life is on the line. And that is a desperation that, sometimes only comes from guys that are like fighting for playing time. Because, you saw it sometimes with Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn when he get in the game. And it was like, I got to defend. I got to I'm fighting for my life. I think about at Ohio State and what he was doing and leveling guys off. And I thought Nico Moretti did that when he came in. And like the challenge is, you can still have that from your first 5 guys, right? And Ammani just, man, all the little things he's asked to do, he does. And it is no way, shape, or form perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But the effort and the attitude can cover up those mistakes. I mean, like I said, I'm sitting there. I'm there at the game live, and they're huddled up. He is shorter than Marcus Damask and Terrence Shannon. Like for people that maybe just maybe watch on TV, haven't been there live, and like I'm like 95% sure he is shorter than both of those guys.
And just as an aside, sorry to interrupt, but like people watch Terrence Shannon standing next to some tall dudes. Like he looks closer to 6'7", to be honest with you, than 6'6", because he's sitting there next to it's like Dane Danger, and like they're eye level with each other.
Damask, same thing.
Yeah, just a massive team.
No, and I think, and I make the height comment because, and he's really long. Ammani's really long, but he's shown in the spurts that he was in. And granted, like tonight the other night you got a big sample size. He's going against Cricky. He's going against Freeman. I think he holds up the best defensively as a post defender. Like they couldn't really move him.
Strong base, right?
Really strong base, and he fights you, and he knows angles, and that's a potential weapon to have moving forward. Because I think the other thing that he does really well, and he got called for one and not for another, but he's really good with verticality, right? Like he's great with that. Like the verticality and like how he immediately can kind of get to hands up reminds me a lot of and I'm not saying that he is this player, but EJ Liddell was really good at this.
Yeah.
Like could just kind of in a bang bang play, like show his hands and get vertical. I'm really excited for Ammani because I think that they're going to find more minutes for him, whatever that ends up looking like. And he's absolutely earned it.
So we're 15, 17 minutes into this and we haven't brought up player of the game. I just want to give a shout out to the bench, and I think everyone wants to hear about that, but huge bounce back performance for Coleman Hawkins because Penn State was so disappointing, and not just the end, but just the entire game. A bunch of turnovers in the first half. He comes out 13 of the first 23 points for his team, really sparked him, really took advantage of a good matchup for him offensively. But there was these turnovers, 4 turnovers, just didn't have the bite at the rim again. But man, in that second half, Mike, he helped close, and 30 points, career high, bunch of assists. I just thought he took over the game towards the end of the game, and that was huge to see. And what did you see? Like, what do you make of that kind of performance by Coleman Hawkins?
I think it takes a lot of toughness and confidence to do what he did. I mean, I think I said it earlier in the show, and I'm not afraid to say it because, I do expect a lot out of Coleman Hawkins because of what he's shown. Right? He was really bad against Penn State.
Yeah.
And he'd tell you the same. Because if you want to tell me that you weren't bad, now you're telling me that that's part of the makeup that you have as a player, that you have games like that. Like that's baked in. And that is, to me, that type of game is an aberration for a guy like Coleman this year. He has proven that he's one of the more impactful guys in this conference. And in terms of what it means for a team, maybe nationally, just with all that he does on the floor and the importance of that. So, I mentioned he set that standard for himself, and it's on him with the mental approach to the game, how locked in you are, to bring that every single night, because it's going to fluctuate, shooting numbers, all those things. But when he's got bite, when he's dialed in and he's got the right approach, you get nights like you got against, or days like you got against Iowa, where you're like, why wouldn't you take this guy in the first round?
Yeah.
right? Like he's that good.
Well, Mike, we were really interested to see how they would do defensively. They give up 85 points in this one, but I felt a little bit better defensively coming out of this game. I've explained it on the podcast, but what did you think defensively of the adjustments they made and just the effort they had?
Yeah, it's funny because after that first half, 44-43, I think, very deflating end to the half with the Sanford little flip in. So I walk down by the media tunnel and I see some people, and some people are like kind of giving me long faces, and I'm like, dude, I'm really encouraged. Like the change that they made to not switch and keep matchups, I thought made all the difference. Because and people can maybe hear this and look at the 85 points and 43 in the first half and say that I'm crazy. But if you think I'm crazy, make one promise to me and watch the film that we're about to do here after this. Because the quality of shot in that first half, I was like, man, if they keep this up, they're going to win this game. I mean, I was talking to some people after the game. People were going back and forth with me on X/Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And they're like, well, 85 points. I'm like, did you expect the 7th ranked offense since January 1st to go scoreless? Like, there's a reason they're that good.
Well, and I sat there and Mike, they barely shot any threes. What disappointed me the most was some of the offensive rebounds and getting some putbacks. Like Owen Freeman, I did not see this kind of toughness out of him as a prospect, like when he was at Bradley Bourbonnais, but like he has really been a good player for them. But Tony Perkins making some tough shots. Josh Dix, I was just like, have a game, man. Like he was making really difficult shots, but they're good. Like that's a good offensive team. I felt like Illinois was dictating more of what an offense was doing compared to Penn State.
Well, it looked more like earlier in the year where with the type of shots that you were forcing. And this is the best way that I can break it down here. What's the true difference? The true difference is that when you switch, right, like you did at Penn State, when you get a Nick Kern going, when you get an Ace Baldwin going, you're switching all the like screens, so the dribble handoffs and everything. So now when Ace Baldwin or Kern are coming off the ball screen, maybe it's Luke Goody guarding them, right? Maybe it's Justin Harmon guarding them, as opposed to, hey, Tony Perkins is your guy that's going to come off the most ball screens, and damn it, Terrence Shannon's going to be the one trailing him damn near every time. Like that is going to be the game plan. We're not deviating from that. If Sanford is setting flares and slipping to the rim and coming off staggers, it's going to be Marcus Domask trailing him.
Did a hell of a job, by the way, Domask.
3 for 11. Peyton Sanford. 0 for 2 from 3, no threes, 5 for 14 from the field for Tony Perkins. Terrence Shannon had a heck of a lot to do with that. And that is, to me, why when you look at, you can see 85 points and you can see whatever it ended up being, 90 for Penn State, and think that that's 5-point difference. There's not much of a change. Night and day. Like it was night and day from Penn State. And
Mike,
I think
the switching part, sorry to interrupt, but is accountability a big factor in that?
Huge. Yeah. I mean, so for people that are trying to really, what's the biggest difference between switching? When I have my matchup, like Terrence Shannon, I come into the game, man, it's going to be a rough day for Tony Perkins, right? Marcus Domask coming into the game, man, I'm going to try to make Peyton Sanford's life a living hell, right? Like that type of ownership and accountability is huge, because I think what they've realized is, yes, we have capable defenders on this roster. We like our size. There's some switchability there, but we're not good enough on the whole to just switch everything, right? It's not that type of defensive team. So let's lean on who our best defenders are, right? And when it comes to getting over ball screens and tracking down, it's Terrence Shannon.
Yep.
Off the ball, dialed in, locked in, because he's kind of a shooter himself. Those guys have a better, propensity to be able to read things for a guy like Peyton Sanford that you're guarding, like Marcus Domask, right? So that's how you come in and say, here's our best matchups. Like Ty Rodgers may not be the best matchup for a Peyton Sanford.
Right.
So instead of switching, because if you switch throughout the possession, now you got Ty Rodgers on Peyton Sanford. Now you got Luke Goody on Tony Perkins. Like that is where it fell apart against Penn State. So you keep the matchups. There's matchup continuity there, and you just get back to what you're doing earlier in the season, where you're contesting tough twos. If they make them, great. You got to make them for 40 minutes. And Iowa didn't do that. 35% in the second half. But you mentioned it. If there's one thing that I came out of that game that was like one thing to tighten up here, it's finishing the possessions, right? Like there was like just a couple times with Freeman and Cricky where it's like, gosh, you played 28 seconds of unbelievable defense. Shot goes up. You got to finish it out. And I think if they find that, which also really good rebounding team earlier in the season, recapture that, man. And what this offense is doing, you're cooking.
Yeah, as good as Coleman Hawkins was, I thought he kind of did the Kofi Coburn thing of chasing blocks and getting out of position. Terrence Shannon, Brad Underwood was all over him for not getting enough rebounds. But we saw you got some offensive ones late in the game, so he showed some bite there. And Quincy Guerrier had a nice first half, but 3 rebounds in 19 minutes. So that's where I still think they can get a little bit better. Mike, big week ahead is you got Minnesota at home. Ken Pom has Illinois as an 11-point favorite. Minnesota just got blown out by Nebraska, but a better team, obviously, than any of us expected. And then Wisconsin on the road, man, for a quad one opportunity and probably the chance to lock up second place in the Big Ten. If you take care of business against Minnesota, get Wisconsin, then go into a final week potentially with a chance to chase down Purdue. So what do you make of these 2 games this week?
Yeah, I think at this point in the season, there's so much film out there. You know, there's so much scouting that gets done, and people know your tendencies. People know exactly what you want to get to defensively. They know exactly what you want to get to offensively. I mean, it's true for everyone across the league, right? So now really comes in, hey, attention to detail, man. You know, focus and toughness. Like that is just like the way they gutted out that game against Iowa. Like that is what you can really draw upon moving forward. Where you're like, and when we lock in and we're focused, it has a ripple effect on our game. Offensively, on the offensive glass, defensively, closing out possessions. Like that's what it's got to be. Because look, Minnesota, compared to previous years, like this is a talented team.
Mm-hmm.
And Dawson Garcia is probably going to be an all Big Ten guy. Cam Christie is going to be an all freshman type of player. And you know, Hawkins has been solid for them. You know what guys like Payne and Ola Joseph and those guys bring. But yeah, like it's just game to game. You know, it can't be like beat Maryland, exhale, Penn State, and then beat Iowa, feel like, you know, you've kind of figured some things out. Like there's got to be just that kind of short-term memory there and move on to the next one and say, hey, what's our job? And let's take care of business. Because with Wisconsin too, what's really interesting with this team is this is the first year since 2015 that their offense is ahead of their defense nationally. And 2015, they were the number 1 offense in the country. Right. So they quite literally, like, it was hard for that defense to be ahead of that. But they got guys that can shoot it, got guys that can step out. I think Kral and Wall are both really underrated players in this league. And the one thing that they're doing better than any year since 2017 is offensive rebounding. Like that, the reason why their offense is higher than their defense, I think they're 17th nationally offensively, and I think 47th defensively. It's because they're getting possessions back. And that has not been the bread and butter for Wisconsin over the years. So Wall, Kral, you got to put a body on AJ Storr, you know, these Klesmit, and these guys, like these are just tough players. And so you have to close out possessions. That's going to be the challenge, I think, in both of these games, coming off that Iowa game where it's like, maybe didn't close out as many as you would have liked to. So, but you mentioned it, right? Like continue to build here as we head into March, because I truly think that Iowa game, you got a lot to build off there.
Yeah, and you know you're going to get Minnesota's best shot. You know, if they want to hold on to any tournament hopes, probably need to win at Illinois. Wisconsin trying to catch Illinois, get higher up in the Big Ten, get a higher seeding in the NCAA tournament. When you're a top 15 team in the country, we'll see where they're at in the AP poll today. You're going to continue to get the best shot. Mike, before we get out of here, I want to ask you, let's go across the Big Ten here. We got 2 weeks left to go. Let's break down some of the awards races here. Big Ten Player of the Year, there's not a race. I mean, Zach Edey.
Yeah.
Number 2 and 3 will be interesting to see. I don't know if they even publicized that, but I have to fill out 3 top guys in the Big Ten for Player of the Year. Who would be number 2 and 3 on your list?
2 and 3.
Right now, Ken Palm has Edie, Jameer Young 2, Terrence Shannon 3, Boo Buie 4, Braden Smith number 5.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I'd probably go Shannon and Bowie. That would probably be my 2-3 with Young kind of right there at 4. But God, man, Jameer Young has been really good this year. Like that team, that Maryland team would be in complete disarray. I mean, they're already somewhat in disarray. I mean, you got to win the other day, but complete disarray without him. But I'm thinking about Northwestern as well without Boo Buie. My Lord, I don't know what they would look like. And Terrence has just been, I had Terrence on my second team at that one point. I don't know if you saw the episode or what was going on there, but what he's done since then, just coming back. I mean, it's first team All-American stuff. So those would be my 2-3.
I talked with a few all Big Ten voters, and they said they'd have him first team. Like, so the question of this,
he's on my first. Like, if we that was kind of like a mid Big Ten season one. I mean, if you did it now, there's no question.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the off court problems. Like they said that wouldn't weigh in. I'm the same way. He's playing, right? Like he's playing. Right. I'm going to vote for him. Big Ten Coach of the Year. Let's see. I think Hoiberg, Ben Johnson, Chris Collins could be in that list. We should probably put Matt Painter in that group. Brad Underwood in that group. Who would you have as your top 3 there?
Yeah, this one I always like to be careful with because there's a lot of, I think we talk out of, I'm not saying you and I, but just as, basketball people can talk out of both sides of their mouths with Coach of the Year voting, because on one hand, people just completely, poo-poo preseason rankings, right? They're like, oh, it's it doesn't mean anything. It's preseason. I mean, you got to kind of put these teams in order. And then once you do Coach of the Year, you're like, well, the preseason rankings had them. And so I look at more the total picture here. And honestly, like my Coach of the Year would be Fred Hoiberg. Like I think, and that's nothing against Matt Painter. Like I think Matt Painter is one of the best coaches in the country. I think he has it all with the way he develops and X's and O's. He's fantastic. But like, unfortunately or unfortunately, I think Edie kind of brings him down a little bit.
No, I agree.
Right. I mean, so with Hoiberg, I thought he did let's start with the offseason. Okay. Like what he nailed the portal, nailed it. Bryce Williams, Alec, there's a number of guys on that team. I mean, Aaron Eulis didn't even play this year, and he's another guy that off the bench could have made an impact. But
Rink Mast, obviously, maybe.
Yeah, Rink Mast. Jeez, I mean, I'm not forgetting probably their best transfer. But look, I think the expectations for Nebraska. I don't even want to say like where they were at preseason, but you can't tell me that the way this program has been the last 7 years, that it's like, hey, they could get a double bye this year. And honestly, game to game, it's not like you look at them, they're like, man, they're just more talented than everyone. Right? Like I think Fred Hoiberg consistently gets them playing hard every game. They are connected. I think they have a great culture. And they've turned that arena into just a really tough place to play. And I think Fred has a huge hand in that.
I'm looking at Bracket Matrix right now, has him as a 10 seed. If I'm Colorado State or Utah State,
disaster. That's a disaster 10 seed to play.
Yeah, I do not want to see them. I agree with you. Would Ben Johnson be second for you?
Yeah, I mean, talk about a guy that probably seat was hotter than anybody's heading into the year. And I know I don't think they'll make the NCAA tournament this year, but the fact that we're even really having the conversation is pretty impressive. I mean, there's a lot of insight that you get from those FS1 all access games. And Minnesota played a game last year against Ohio State that was all access. And I came, just like I did with Sean Miller when they played St. John's on the all access, I came away from that game just incredibly impressed with Ben Johnson. Like, not only just the the moves he was making during the game, the things he's calling out, the adjustments he's making. But I think those guys really play for him.
You can see it.
Yeah.
Compared to, let's say, Michigan right now, Indiana, like right, they play hard for him. Like they you can tell they like playing for him.
Yeah, and that's more than half the battle. And one instance particularly last year during that all access that I saw with Johnson was, it was late game. They had a poor free throw shooter going to the line, and it's a timeout. So he's drawing up basically what their defense is going to be after these free throws. And the whole time in the huddle, he is reiterating, after you make both, after you make both, after you make both. And even out of the huddle, he's looking at him again. He goes, hey, after you make both of these, and like that, and that's just a coach's way of instilling confidence in you. Because if you're sitting in that huddle and you're like, all right, well, if he makes this or if he misses it, like now you're bringing in some doubt into an already poor free throw shooter's mind. Kid goes up there, makes both of those, they're able to set their defense, they win the game. Yeah. So like that stuff I thought was really impressive. And so it's no surprise that those guys are kind of rallied this year and played for him.
Yeah, I think it's Hoiberg's to lose. And then, if you're going third, I bet it's Collins, Underwood, or Painter. Probably.
Yeah, I think you could interchange. You can interchange all those guys. I mean, I think Brad Underwood deserves a ton of credit. I mean, we could probably do a whole another episode with what he's accomplished over these past few years and the company that puts him in.
Yeah,
just in the Big Ten.
It's 5 straight 21 seasons, Mike. I was texting you and you got them all right. I asked you for the trivia question of the 6 guys in the 21st century to do it. And you look up and down, it's Hall of Famers, soon to be Hall of Famers. It's Tom Izzo, Bo Ryan, Thad Matta, who had one of the best runs in the Big Ten in recent memory. And then Chris Holtmann was kind of the random one because his first 5 years at Illinois, but Brad Underwood's in some really elite company, Matt Painter being the other one there. So that's quite an accomplishment. I know there's more to be done in March, but what he took over and what he's built, it's been incredibly impressive.
20 plus win seasons. It's why that benchmark or that mark is so important for coaches, because it's what we just talked about. Like there's some threshold there that constitutes, a good season or kind of like didn't quite get there. He's done that. And it was not pretty the first couple of years, but the way he's built this thing has been unbelievable. I figured when you texted me that, you don't text me that unless there's a fun one.
It's a fun
there. Yeah, like if I was just like,
John Beilein,
John Beilein, Izzo, Painter, Bo Ryan, Matta, and Underwood. It wouldn't have been as fun. So I figured that when you said that, there was one maybe potentially hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, some guys who were close. Mark Turgeon got 5 of 6.
Green, I think, had a 420. Fran.
Yeah, he had 4 or 5. Fran had 4 or 5. There was one more in there. Leon had 8 of 9. So
Tubby Smith, right?
Tubby. Yeah, you texted me Tubby. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
4 or 5.
People, all right, so players that play at Illinois right now probably have a certain perception of Minnesota. Dude, when I was there, my freshman year especially, like they were just, my God, that was a really good team. We had, and people are probably going to hear this and be like, there's no way that was the case. We were the 13th ranked team in the country with number 8 Minnesota coming to our place, and we lost by 17. Like they were just, they had pros, great athletes, could shoot it. I mean, that was a really good team.
Right before I let you go, I want to give you a moment to shout out your guy. Malcolm Hill signs a 2-way deal with the Pelicans. 28 years old, man. It's just kind of a testament to his perseverance and improvement as a player. So hopefully he gets some more cups of coffee in the NBA, because it's been an awesome story to see him kind of go from overseas, then come back and just really commit himself to making the NBA, and to be able to do it's been awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't be happier for him. I think if you know Malcolm, yeah, he really is the best. I don't even say he's not even a kid anymore. He's 28 years old. He's the best dude.
It's one of my favorites to cover.
Yeah, and just I think he has such a good heart. Yeah, and he's such a nice kid that it probably hurt him early in his career because it wasn't until like that the shift happened for him, really at the end of his freshman year. Like he needed some of that affirmation, I think, where he was a bench guy up until Penn State late in the season, his freshman year. And he kind of needed to hear like, you are a starter and we're trusting you for him to blossom. And then you go from 4 points a game your freshman year to 14 a game your sophomore year. He continues to build that. And, and he put together a heck of a career. He goes overseas. I think we're about 5 years removed from him tearing his ACL in Germany. And that was an inflection point for him where he's just a kid that, he has other interests outside of basketball, and basketball is like, it's part of what he does, but it's not who he is. And, I had a conversation with him. This would have been maybe 3 years ago. He was done playing in Jerusalem, and that was a really tough season for him. DNPs, wasn't playing, didn't really see eye to eye with his coach, and that really hurt things for him. And I'm on the phone with him, and he's like, man, I'm just going to come back and play in the G League and try to make a run at this thing. And even I was sitting there, I was like, God, the money's definitely better overseas. Right. There's inherent risk with doing that. But the thing you come to realize with Malcolm Hill is he can accomplish it. Like he can do it because he's a worker. And that was on display. We had 9 new guys come in his freshman year. And I may have told this story before, so I apologize if I'm reiterating it, but we had 9 new guys come in, and, you had to make 20,000 shots during the summer. Right. Yeah. And I looked at myself where I'm like, I'm going to just blow past 20,000 shots. Like that's kind of what I had to do as a guy that was like fighting for his life to try to get minutes, get in the rotation. Malcolm Hill comes in as a, top 50, whatever he was, top 40 recruit, and had every, opportunity to be like, well, whatever, get the 20,000, go play video games, whatever, like some guys did. I come in there at the end of the summer, he's made 30,000. Like that's just the type of dude that he is. He's like just a consummate worker. He's relentless with his work ethic, and he was just always in the gym. And people can hear that and say, well, of course, like you got a facility, you're a basketball player, you're a college basketball player. Of course you're always in the gym. It ain't everybody. Right. And even the guys that did it weren't doing it at the level that Malcolm Hill was doing it. So as much as like I sit here, I'm like, man, this is really his 3rd NBA team that is taking a chance on him. And you sit there like, this is incredible. You're also simultaneously not surprised that he's accomplished it.
That's awesome. Well, Mike LaTulip, if people want more of you, we'll do our film room after this, breaking down that defense. So check that out on the VIP side of things. Mike LaTulip will catch up with you next week, man. Appreciate it as always.
Appreciate you, man.